Hey, what is up, mortals? Welcome to Season 1 Part 3 of What If Deku was in 1B. Just wanted to greet you guys by just saying sit back and relax. You're in for a treat, so we begin. No one knew how to deal with the problem. The students immediately tried to evacuate, jamming the halls with their bodies. It was impossible to move with everyone pushing shoulder to shoulder. And Izuku found his small self pressed against the glass of the hallway. Despite being caught in the panic, he looked outside, expecting a villain fight but noticed only the media. Is it just the press? He wondered before realizing that the reporters were the ones trespassing on campus. He sighed before trying to figure out a way to stop the pointless pushing. I need to stop everyone from panicking. But how? He clung against the window until he saw a familiar mop of brown hair with eyes that darted all over the place. It was rough, but an idea popped into Izuku's head. Subaruba, turning his head around. Subaruba saw that he was being pushed toward Izuku and grabbed hold of the outstretched hand. With a tug, the two boys stuck against the glass. Midoriya. He breathlessly panicked as Deku pointed to the air just above their heads. Can you make an L-shaped platform for me to jump onto? Subaruba was confused and still worried when Izuku patted his shoulder. The greenette pointed out the window, and Subaruba let out a sigh of relief, calming down as he caught up with the situation, letting air fill his lungs. Subaruba solidified the requested shape as Izuku placed a foot against the bottom glass lining. Jumping up, he crouched on the solid platform before placing a hand on the upward side of the air wall, remembering how just a small tap was capable of blowing away Shizaki's vines. Izuku activated One for All in his fingers' tips. And just like he planned, the pressure built, with the sound of the air wall shattering and a blast impact. Izuku ricocheted across the heads of scared students and caught their attention as he crashed onto the emergency exit board, grabbing the sign with his uninjured hand. Izuku cupped his mouth with the other like a speaker, trying not to let his nerves shake him in the face of so many students. Izuku pushed down his fear with a sigh because he told himself that he had a job to do. CC calmed down. The students' panic ceased for a moment as they looked up at the yelling greenette. It's just the press. There is no villain. Act like the US students you are and calm yourselves down, students murmured. And the ones near the window looked out to confirm what Izuku had said. A wave of relief washed over as the pushing stopped, and the crowd started to walk normally again. Izuku sighed in relief as he sat on the sign, watching the students file out of the halls when a flying horn suddenly flew at the greenette. Looking down, Izuku saw that it was one of the international students in his class, Pony Tsunotori. Her quirk was called Horn Cannon. Right, she's not very fluent in Japanese, if I remember right. Izuku grabbed onto the horn, and it lifted him off the sign with ease. Once on the ground, he thanked Pony for the help. That was good. You calmed everyone down, complimented a guy with exposed teeth as he stood next to Pony. Juzo Honuki was one of the recommendation students and just happened to also speak English. I'm just glad to relieve the chaotic situation. Izuku awkwardly chuckled as the three of them met up with Subaruba and headed back to class. When they arrived, more students praised Izuku and Vlad gave a nod of approval. His self-confidence rose a little as the class chattered about Izuku's heroics, and the greenette was about to deny the compliments when Takage gave him a pat on the back. Just accept the compliments, Deku. We all decided you would make a good class president, even if you're not too confident. I mean, you were stuttering when you calmed everyone down, but it still worked, right? Izuku nodded, blushing a little as Takage kept going. You're too humble, come on. Where's that fighting spirit from before? A majority of the class agreed, and Izuku bowed at everyone, finally accepting his class rep role. The next day, as the students settled in the classroom, Vlad told them to quieten down. Okay, class. You will be participating in a rescue exercise for your basic hero training. Go suit up and board the bus outside. We're going to an off-campus location for the exercise. Where are we going? Takage asked, and the teacher smiled. It's the Unforeseen Simulation Joint, or the USJ for short. I'll explain the rest when we're there. The students quickly dispersed to change. And because Shizaki's second wave of vines had ripped Izuku's homemade hero suit, he was the only one in the UA sports kit. As they stood outside on the bus, Izuku peeked inside to see an open seating arrangement, deciding to get everyone to line in a single file to avoid pushing. They were brought in quickly and sat wherever they wanted. While on the bus ride, the students' conversation topic turned to quirks as Awase asked the class, who's the most powerful? I got to say Komori, Shizaki and Kaibara, since they are all powerhouses. Monoma answered, and Takage joined in. I'd say Deku too. You saw what he did with a single touch. Izuku admired the ceiling of the bus awkwardly as another student pointed something out. His quirk reminds me of All Might's, just more self-damaging, like usual. Senkaibara wasn't the best at conversations, but Takage smiled and took control. Well, we'll see how he is once he controls it first. If we're talking about people who will make it as popular pros out of those four. Only Deku and Komori when she's in idle mode. It was Awase who spoke up as he pointed at Shizaki and Kaibara. I mean, you two are kinda hard to approach. The two students just ignored him as the class agreed with a lighthearted chuckle. Popular, huh? Shoda pondered before adding his opinion. Takage should be added to the list. She's friendly, and her quirk is extremely useful. Oh. And Monoma is extremely smart, so he should be added too. The class nodded in agreement. And Awase chuckled, although he does get a little intimidating like Shizaki sometimes. The students chattered more about what makes a great future hero while picking on individual students once in a while. It caused lighthearted laughter as the class got to know each other better. Izuku smiled as he listened into the conversation before wondering if Wano was like this. Power was now more equal to the students, which meant Bakugo wouldn't target anyone in particular. The heroes in training arrived at the large training facility, and Izuku pushed his thoughts down. The famous rescue hero, 13, greeted them, and she gave an introduction to the USJ, with a small speech about how the young students must use their quirks to save people rather than fight. She opened the doors, and the class marveled at the facility's different sections. 13 stood back with Vlad as she pointed 3 fingers up at him, and the homeroom teacher nodded. No one else understood apart from Izuku, who realized it meant All Might had used his hours for the day. But the class didn't mind as they walked along the yellow and red brick path. The facility was just massive as the class headed toward the stairs. An excited Takage ran ahead to look around, and everyone stared in awe at the scene. A central plaza acted as the merging point for multiple paths leading to different rescue scenarios. They could see an area with damaged buildings, another with a landslide, one with a massive lake, and much more. Excitement raced through their veins as 13 explained that rescue was an essential part of being a hero. Except her words were interrupted as Takage pointed at the central plaza where a black mist started to materialize out of nowhere. The fountain water flickered as Takage spoke her concern. 13. Is that part of the simulation? Chills went up Vlad as he turned and immediately ran to the edge of the stairs to check what Takage had seen. It moved the black fog to reveal a piercing gaze through red eyes. Protect the students, Vlad yelled at the other hero, who immediately ran forward, joining the homeroom teacher to look at the ones who appeared. The students looked uneasily at each other, unsure of what was going on. Children, get back. Those are real villains. I repeat, this is not a simulation. Half the class backed away as the others stood frozen, looking down at the villains who had appeared in the plaza, and noticed how 3 of them stayed by the mist. They're probably the leaders, Kaibara pointed out in monotone as one of them looked directly at the teachers. Where is he? We want All Might. The one with pale blue hair and hands completely covering his body looked around. Maybe if I kill a few kids, he'll come out to play. The few students who stood by the edge looked at their teacher. Is the whole campus under attack? Or is this their only target? Either way, if the alarm system isn't being triggered, then one of these villains must have a quirk that's masking their presence here. Monoma analyzed as he read the situation. Sir, there's a firing squad. You can't fight them on your own, even if your stamina can keep up with the quantity. Your style isn't long distance. Izuku was worried for his teacher as he added in his input. You can't be a pro as you can't adapt, kid. Izuku held his breath as Vlad got into a sprinting position. I'll leave the kids to you. 13. The rescue hero nodded, and before anyone could react, Vlad jumped and rushed down the stairs like a bullet with inhuman speed. Shooting squad, take your aim. A villain with guns for fingers yelled out as another with silver hair questioningly looked at the homeroom teacher. I thought only All Might and 13 was supposed to be here. Who's the? The homeroom teacher cut her off by dealing swift punches to their guts, winding them immobile. Another with a mutant-type quirk was about to talk, but Vlad was too fast, body slamming the villain and knocking him to the floor. Another villain came from behind, but the teacher jumped up, kicking the incoming man into 2 others, knocking 3 out at once. Too slow, he yelled out before turning to look at the now wary crowd of villains. One villain turned to look at her partners. A wrong move since Vlad took advantage of this and immediately ran forward, knocking her unconscious and grabbed her body before using it to throw at another unsuspecting villain. The blue-haired villain's voice rasped out as he watched Vlad fight. Wow, I underestimated him, Izuku said as he lagged behind the class to watch the fight. Come on, Deku, we have to go. Takage came back for him and quickly pulled the freckled boy to follow 13. The class started to run across the red bricks as another swirl of purple-black mist appeared by the entrance. The deep voice was menacing as the mist rose. Damn. I got so caught up I let the one who seemed most troublesome get away. Vlad punched another villain unconscious as the mist revealed two slanted eyes, bright yellow as it contrasted against the purple-black. We are the League of Villains. I know it's impolite, but we decided to invite ourselves into this haven of justice to say hello. The class came to a stop and stared at the intangible figure. And besides, isn't this a fitting place for All Might, the symbol of peace, to take his last breath? There was a collected gasp as the cap on 13's index figure popped off, and she aimed her hand up. I still have a role to play. Before 13 could do anything, Huryu, Rin, and Tetsu immediately ran forward with a battle cry. Hastily attacking the mist, Tetsu aimed his iron arm, and Rin sent a storm of dragon scales. The mist only chuckled and flickered around, sending the attacks elsewhere to prove their attempt futile. You live up to your school's reputation, but you should be more careful, children, or else someone might get hurt. You two, get out of the way right now, 13 yelled out. But the two students only looked at her in panic as the mist expanded, sending strips out in all directions. I'll scatter you all across the facility to meet my comrades. And your deaths. The mist engulfed the class, and the students desperately tried to fight. It's a trap, Tetsu yelled. Izuku covered his head as he fell through the mist, and when he opened his eyes, the greenette found himself falling through the air. He fell into the water with a splash and somersaulted around a bit before stilling himself, trying to face the surface, mind spinning quicker than his legs kicked. They came here to kill All Might. Guess it's a good thing that he's not in class right now. But where is he? His thoughts came to an abrupt end as a shark-faced villain came speeding towards Izuku at high speed. Nothing personal, kid, but you gotta die. But before he could get any closer, a wall of vines made a column with Izuku in the middle, and the greenette immediately grabbed on. The vines then pulled him upwards, and Izuku threw up water as Shizaki dropped him on deck. A second later, a waist was thrown on board too in a similar fashion. The two boys thanked Shizaki, who just stood there casually twisting handfuls of water out of her tunic. She sighed as her attempt was barely doing anything before facing Izuku. I would rather not converse with you, but I would like your input on the situation. The waist sighed, seeing his existence ignored, and Izuku looked over the side of the ship. This attack had clearly been thought out. It wouldn't be too much of a wild guess to say the villains really have found a way to kill All Might. He's not even here right now. But even if he does show up, there's no guarantee he will make it out in one piece. All three on board were realists, and they agreed with what Izuku said, but before he could say more, the sound of water rushing caught their attention. Izuku's eyes darkened as he looked at the villains. If they can beat him, then we have to stop whatever these bad guys are planning. We have to work together to keep All Might safe. No one at UA knows what's happening. Izuku looked at the other two. Let's be heroes. Meanwhile, Kaibara and Ryaiko Yanagi were thrown into the landslide zone. But it wasn't a problem. Yanagi didn't even have to act as Kaibara bounced his whole body around, knocking the villains in the vicinity out cold. Rin, Kajiro Bondo, and Manga were in the mountain zone, and although Komori overpowered Bondo in practice, he immobilized all villains that stepped into the glue he squirted out. Rin and Manga teamed up for the long-distance fights as Manga made the villains slip, and Rin used a wave of dragon scales to knock them out. In the fire zone, Shishida was frowning as he avoided the flames. The zone was a significant disadvantage, mainly as a beast, but he was calm. Where is everyone? Honuki asked Takage, who was only a floating head, as she distributed her body everywhere, tracking her classmates. They've been scattered across the facility, but our classmates are still here, Honuki repeated in English for Pony. And the other 4 students present let out a sigh. He's not affected by physical attacks, and it seems his quirk is teleportation, Honuki analyzed as he and 13 observed the Mist Man. Fastest student here. The recommendation student nodded, understanding it was a tactical retreat as Pony looked shocked. How can we leave you? She stammered, but 13 shook her head. The alarms aren't sounding, and our phones and radios are useless right now. One of these villains must be to blame. It will be faster for one of you to retreat and get help than find whoever is jamming everything. Honuki nodded. We need to make a strategic retreat and get help. We don't stand a chance right now. Shihai Kiwaro stepped forward and lay low to the floor as he added, "They've blocked the exit. There must be alarms outside. That's why they're keeping all of us trapped inside here. If we can get someone out, they won't follow. I might be the fastest here, but only once if I'm in the shadows of the city. It's good enough," 13 yelled, and the mist villain sighed. "Even if this is your only option, are you really foolish enough to strategize in front of your enemy?" 13 aimed her uncapped fingers at him. "It doesn't matter if you know what we're planning when I'm done with you." The mist villain's edge was being grabbed and dragged towards 13's finger as she yelled out. Black hole. A vortex of air and mist immediately made a drill shape, with the tip disappearing into nothing. "Are you sure we can even help?" Awase looked at Izuku, who gulped. "We have to try." He then turned to look at Shizaki. "They sent you here. That means the villains probably have no idea what our quirks are." Shizaki nodded before looking at the massive dome from across the lake. "You would be correct. If they knew my quirk, I would be sent into that fire zone. With the lack of sunlight and water, I would have limited vines." Izuku continued analyzing as he spoke. "They probably separated us because they didn't know what we could do, planning to overpower us in smaller groups, pick us off one by one." He looked at Shizaki, who sighed. "I would usually just completely overtake this area with my vines, but even I couldn't reach the bottom when I pulled you both up." She took a few steps around the boat. "And this boat might sink before my vines reach all the sinners." Before they could say anything more, a hand made of water, accompanied by the sound of a drawn blade, suddenly cut the boat in two. Izuku wobbled on his feet, but Awase ran forward towards the damage, immediately pulling out thin sheets of steel from his suit and activating his quirk. The boat creaked but stabilized as Awase quickly merged the ship in critical places to stay afloat. Fusing objects at the atomic lit, Izuku started to mutter but was cut off by yelling from the villains. They didn't seem to like how the boat wasn't sinking, and a few readied to climb along the walls. With no time to think, Izuku stomped a leg on the rail before facing the sky, and a ferocious roar broke out from his lungs. The villains immediately retreated underneath the surface out of caution as Izuku got off, his mind racing. "Come on, what would Kaken do?" He looked over at the other two, who nodded, and Shizaki's vines extended over. Izuku held them to his shirt, and Awase immediately fused the separate vines. It formed a single string vine connecting Shizaki to Izuku. "Awase, fuse Shizaki's vines stiff the second I say so. Hold on tight. We're vaulting over this lake. Pole vaulting style." With no hesitation, he leapt off the side of the boat, falling toward the water with a yell. "Now die." A villain laughed at his attempt, and they readied to fight. "Stupid move, kid." Izuku's mind spun as he held his hand forward. "I need more power than a tap because all the villains are scattered around the boat. I need them together." One for all raced through the veins of his middle finger as Izuku grit his teeth, the surface of the water racing toward him. Delaware smash. With his finger broken, a powerful shockwave erupted forward, crashing toward the water. The second that contact was made, the water was pushed aside as a crater formed with sides so steep it was almost vertical. Awase, Izuku's body had ricocheted from his smash, and now he was high in the air with the vine between Shizaki and him completely straight. The waist nodded and immediately fused the vine's atoms, and the whole structure became a long flexible pole. Shizaki disconnected the vines from her hair as she and Awase held onto their end. Izuku opened his eyes despite the pain as the water he pushed away came crashing to the middle, dragging the villains to the center. With his teeth clenched, Izuku's body acted as a weight, driving the pole down, and it bent dangerously, elastic energy building up drastically as it threatened to snap. One for all ran through the veins of Izuku's ring finger, and the second he felt the vine could no longer hold, another small blast erupted from Izuku's hand. He aimed it at the villains who were now together in one spot as he yelled, "Smash!" with his body's ricochet from the secondary smash acting as the box. The vine was the pole as both Shizaki and Awase pole vaulted from the boat and high into the air. They stayed there for a second, and it was enough time for Shizaki to create more vines to crash land into on the shore. I aimed my second smash at them, so I should have knocked them all unconscious. The trio nodded before they headed toward the central plaza, only for horror to fill their faces as the blue-haired villain had a hand on Vlad's elbow, the teacher's skin starting to decay. Thank you all for watching the video to the end. Now there are a few more things that I'd like to go over before the video ends. On behalf of We the Celestials, I'd like to thank the writer for this video, as well as the editor for this video. Their details will be in the description. If you're a voice actor, editor, or writer, or you're interested in becoming one of those, go to the Discord in the description of this video and hit up the head of one of those areas. We're always looking for members to join us. That's it from us for today's video. Thank you all for watching, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you're interested, and hit that like button if you liked the video. Until next time, peace out mortals. Have a fantastic day.